Hello again. Welcome back to Nature of Reality Radio. Margaret Rogers Van Coops. Glad to be having you as a guest again. You asked to come on the show again, and anybody who's been listening to my show for a long time, will know that in the old days of this show, I used to be when I was on Blog Talk, be very picky about not having the same guest on twice because I wanted to have a different guest on every single show till the day I died to make my show as impartial and informative and fair as possible. But I've kind of moved past that, and of course, any guest that says they want to come on again, like Alan Steinfeld did recently, and some others, I've always been willing to take up the opportunity, and you did suggest you wanted to come on again to talk about DNA and RNA stuff and a few other things. So, great to have you on, but just a couple disclaimers I need to get out first. Made this in about the past 8 shows or so, and I'm probably only going to do two or three more shows where I say this. And that is, first of all, the past 2.5 years of shows, aside from the past 8 or 9, all the people who have been listening to those shows with headphones have probably gotten annoyed by the fact that they've been listening to my voice in one earphone and my guest's voice in the other earphone bud. That's was because all this time my Skype recorder was on stereo. I did not know that that was the problem. Nobody said anything to me about that being the problem. I thought it was some sort of a sabotage, but I was wrong. So any of the past 2.5 years worth of shows, if you guys want to listen to them, I suggest listening to it with a computer or some device where you don't have to use headphones, so that won't be an issue. But if you do have to use earphones or headphones, just know that you're going to have to deal with my voice in one earbud and the guests in the other. I know it's annoying, but it is what it is, and it's only 2.5 years worth of show, so it won't be a problem anymore. And also, I did, in the not too distant past, get a message from YouTube suggesting that my show has a lot of spam on it, my YouTube channel. That's baloney, because all I do is interview guests and have them answer my questions and carry on the subjects and topics and whatnot that we talk about. So how they could say my channel has spam, it makes no sense, unless, of course, they're trying to come up with some excuse to justify getting rid of my channel. Alex Jones, eat your heart out. Kick me off YouTube, and because I expose a little too much stuff the powers that be don't want people to know about. So have me in my prayers. Wish me the best of luck. If this show does get kicked off YouTube, I swear I will continue it on some other medium, but hopefully that will not be a problem. So now that I've gotten those 2 bits of info out of the way, it's great to have you on again. You wanted to, in the message you sent me, I believe you said specifically stuff dealing with DNA and RNA, and maybe a couple of other things that you wanted to bring up that maybe weren't discussed on the past show that I did. And by the way, people that are wondering, that other show that I did with her, my voice for whatever the reason was very, very quiet on that, very hard to hear. So Margaret wanted to re-upload it to her channel, and when she does, I will post a link to that in the description of the interview that I have with her on my channel, rather than just uploading it again on my channel. It's best just add that to the description. So without further ado, Margaret, what exactly was the stuff dealing with DNA and RNA that you wanted to talk about on this show that made you decide to come on again, and anything else that you wanted to talk about? I guess we'll first of all just stick with the DNA RNA stuff, and then we'll switch topics. So you got the floor. Why is that worthy of coming on to be a guest again?
Yeah, well, thank you. In case people didn't catch my name, Margaret Rogers Van Coops. Actually, the DNA is very important because, let me go back. I need to when I was 15. And my spirit guides came to me. They didn't call it DNA. They just said to me, you have a coding in all your cells that is exactly the same as your ancestors. And I didn't really know much about it, but I did know I had a long ancestry because my family, being British and being royalty at one time, goes back to 1066 and before that. So I had a lot of snobbery and stuff that I grew up with, which I hated. The old black, white, khaki, purple, green, yellow, you're up class, down class, whatever it was. I hated it. And thank God that's all gone. Well, mostly gone around the world. But the bottom line is that when we are spirits up in the spirit world, waiting for our turn to be born, we are like guardian angels or spirit guides, or we've done a unity thing in the spirit sense of watching our ancestors, who are at that time going to be, for us, our ancestors. But while we're watching them, they're alive, they're living their life, we're seeing all the things that they do. And so as we watch that, we absorb everything they're doing. Now, as a anatomical situation, fast forward through the years, being a doctor and trained in anatomy and physiology and all the things I went through, I came to understand about the DNA. And I started to really look at myself when I actually manifested Parkinson's disease, because my father had it, my grandmother had it, and her father had it, and then before that was another woman who had it. So we could see that male, female, and there's me, getting it. And I'm only 35. And all my doctors can say to me is, well, you've got it. All we can do is give you tranquilizers, which they gave me, which I took, which nearly killed me because, well, it did actually stop my heart, and they had to revive me, because, believe it or not, it was a derivative of heroin. So that's how medical professions were messed up back with medicines way back when I was only 45 and I'm now 77. So what happened as a result of developing the shakes and my body locking up so I couldn't even walk, I had the full-blown Parkinson's. They didn't have brain scans in those days, but they could tell by doing all these different tests. And told me, yes, you absolutely have it. And so I went home and sat down and meditated with my spirit guides and said, well, what do I do? And it was at that point that I started to be educated about what I was eventually to understand was the DNA. And what I learned was that I was manifesting the characteristics and the personality traits of those 5 ancestors. In other words, I was thinking like them, I was feeling like them, I was acting like them, I was acting out their lives through my current life. That's a lot to think about, Andrew. Got a question about that?
No, I guess not. Not off the top of my head, no. But I'm sure more questions will come up as the time goes on. So, with that being said, you wanted to talk more about your book. I'm sorry I didn't interrupt you when you were first talking about this at the beginning. I probably should have, so you would have had the chance to just repeat everything again when I officially started the show. But rather than wait until the end of the program, why don't I give you the chance now? You said in the email that I actually have on my screen in front of me here, I did just download the book to my computer, all 168 pages of it to I'm sure I'll check it out in the not too distant future. I'm currently reading another book that's going to take a little while to finish reading, but when I'm done that, yours will be one of the things I put on my list of to read. And you said I am about to become very famous with my new book, Donald Trump, The Enigma of Society, which is all about the soul coding, DNA and RNA and influences in his life. So, you don't think Donald Trump is a red herring to the point where you felt he's worthy of having a book written about him and, the enigma of society. So what exactly is the connection between, is he the enigma of society, or is there some enigma of society that he is a part of? And, what is it about the soul coding DNA and RNA that influences in his specific life that that you want to talk about as worthy of putting in that
Right. Let me come up to the fact that I had this Parkinson's disease. And what I found out was that, down through ancestry, we pass down thoughts, sayings. We grow up with our parents telling us, well, when I was your age, I did this and I did that and I had this happen, and you need to listen to me and you need to follow me and you need to understand this is exactly what you're supposed to be like, this is what you're supposed to do, and so on. And, when you think about every child that's born in terms of, training, we have to go back into the womb and realize that in order to live inside the mother, we have to absorb all that the mother is going through, her history, her grandma, her father, in other words, a mother telling her what she should behave like, what she should do, and so on, so that when a child is born from that person, they are then going to say, well, my mum told me this and that, and it worked for me, so this must work for you. And we pass down by word of mouth, whether we're living in Africa under a banana tree or whether we're living in the middle of a big city. We all do this. And the reason we do this is because of the DNA. And the enigma has, as far as, Spirit Guides gave me this title, by the way. The enigma, as far as the dictionary says, there's 4 aspects to it. One is it's an obscure speech or way of writing. So like if I say, I'd give my right arm to have that vase off the side there, we don't realize that we're actually saying, yeah, I'll make my arm suffer because I didn't get it. So we write stuff down, we tell ourselves stuff, and we code that into ourselves, in our body. And we don't realize years later that we've added a thought after thought to that arm as I give my right arm. And suddenly one day the arm hurts so much we don't realize why. But we're actually carrying cellular memory of all the times we've told ourselves we can't have something. So that's a very obscure way that speech and writing, things that we read, come into our body and we store them. Oh, that was a wonderful topic. I really loved it. But, I can't think about it right now. I'll think about it later. And it goes into the subconscious and it's still going to affect the cells in the arm as the example. The second thing is people speak in riddles. And Donald does quite a bit of that. So what does that really mean? We think a word, like we think, stay with the right arm. I would give my right arm for this. But then we're thinking between, well, if I was to go and get it, it's going to cost me $49. And then when I've got that, I won't be able to pay the gas bill. And if I can't pay the gas bill, then my mum's going to be angry with me because I'm going to have to borrow off her. And so we've got all this dialogue from, the first thought, I'd give my right arm for that object I want to buy, and we end up by not telling everybody all those thoughts that we've had in between, and we end up by saying something like, well, the dog doesn't want me to go walk his right now, so I can't have it. And everyone's going, what? What's that got to do with the first I give my right arm for it? Going walking, because we haven't seen the mind making all these associations. And when I was looking at the way Donald Trump talks, I can see he's missing out a lot of his thoughts. So nobody knows what he's really thinking. So to us, it's riddles all the time. We're trying to work out the puzzle. And then the third aspect is that a lot of what people say and do seems to be inscrutable or mysterious in a person. They're keeping secrets and we're not sure if they're a good or a bad person. And so we're trying to guess, we're trying to hear what they're saying, we're trying to watch the news, we're trying to find out more information so we can understand more. And then the fourth aspect of an enigma is something that we just don't understand. It's like you're standing there going, what? Huh? Maybe someone says, for example, in my head, they show me a formula, a scientific formula, and they say something like, this means that the planet's going to blow up next year. And I'm going like, what? How could that make any sense to me? I'm sitting in my kitchen reading a book, it doesn't. So the reason Spirit Guides gave me the subtitle of the Enigma Explained in many ways, is, sorry, I get the right title, the Enigma of Society, was because they wanted people to realize that there is a lot more going on than is really realized, and people are focusing on what he's saying or what he's doing all the time. And they're not understanding. So what this book is really about is not really about Donald Trump so much about his ancestors. We go back to the 1700s here. And a little bit of interesting news here is I'm not a research person, and I've got a disclaimer back and front because I'm saying very carefully I didn't want to write this book. Spirit Guides wanted to write it. And when it turned up that I finally was pestered enough to agree, it was the seven archangels that wrote this through me. And if, as you're reading me in the beginning, just I'm not taking any responsibility for what's going to come out of my fingers and onto the keyboards. You can really see the difference between the channeled work, the way the English is, as opposed to my writing. In the beginning of the book, they explain how we have a soul structure coding, which I think I talked about on the last show. And the soul structure coding gives us, in this life and each life that we move through, a personality and a character, and it gives us a spiritual strength to respond to stimuli in various ways so that that character and personality develops. And it gives us a passion and desire to belong to something greater than we are, such as God or, a better organization or whatever it is. And at the same time, it gives us a lock into our past lives and, anything that we are spiritually learning. So we are complex beings. We're very complex beings through the DNA. We are our ancestors. We are our past lives. We are our spiritual selves from all aspects of oneness. And we are here to make some kind of change to the people in our environment, to the people beyond our environment, and now we've got tech, the world. So this book is explaining the soul structure coding that we all come in with, the DNA and the RNA. So I just wanted to know if you did I make that clear, or do you have a question there about all that?
Yeah,
Are you
I
there?
do. Yeah, yes. Sorry, I had a little problem with my mute thing. Yeah, I do have some questions here. Well, I got a feeling this is going to be turning into an interview of sorts about information regarding Donald Trump, and he's caused a lot of confusion with a lot of people regarding who he is, and what his intentions are. A couple things I need to get out about him, and I'd like to give you the chance to give what you have to say about these things. And well, first of all, is he a minion of the Illuminati? I mean, I did a lot of research on that when he was elected president, and it seems like nobody can give a definitive answer to that. I mean, it seems so counterintuitive that someone of that great wealth could not have any connections to the Illuminati bloodlines. And well, for one, he is Hillary Clinton's 19th cousin. And their ancestry can be traced back to some king, I believe, in like the 1200s or something to that effect. But I did ask Fritz Springmeier, the author of Bloodlines of the Illuminati, what he thinks about that, and he said, well, frankly, even an Illuminati bloodline researcher like me would have to say that 19th cousin is such a distant relationship. For all intents and purposes, it's kind of meaningless. So you could be walking past your 19th cousin on the street any time during the year, even someone with a closer relationship to you, and it's, well, it's significant because it's such a distant relationship. But thing about Trump, I see something about his family that you have in the book. Now, I spoke to a 32nd degree Freemason who said that Donald Trump's father did have connections to the Freemasons, and but to his knowledge, he does not know if Donald Trump himself has any ties, doesn't know if that's the Freemasons that are strictly benevolent or the Freemason factions that have been infiltrated by malevolent Illuminati-based organizations. And also about Donald Trump, he was born on the day of a total lunar eclipse. Well, then again, so are a lot of other people on that day. 5 people are born and 2 people die every second on planet Earth. So there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that were born on that day that really don't have any significance in the present day. But many would still assert, well, okay, the fact that he was born on that day should be taken to mean something significant. And I mean, people like Alex Jones and others have jumped on the Donald Trump bandwagon and seem to insist he's not out to get us. He does care for us. He is of the light. To quote John Smarty Mendez, who I had as a guest on my show, saying Trump is of the light. I assure you he is. Well, okay, maybe he's of the light, but does that mean he can escape the clutches of the dark? Ted Marr pointed out that Henry Kissinger, when he met Trump in that meeting, for all intents and purposes, the purpose of that meeting was so Henry Kissinger could tell Donald Trump, "You will do what my minions and me tell you to do, and you and your family of business partners will be dead if you don't. Is that understood?" And David Icke's been doing a great job of.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you.
Okay.
All of that is imagination, hearsay, illusion, and fantasy. You could go on forever with it. And that is the nature of mankind, and that is the enigma, okay, that everyone is going through right now. They're all rationalizing and trying to explain. The truth is, when I got a few chapters done, and then just typing, because Spirit's speaking to me, and all of a sudden they said, "Now go do the research." And I went, "What? I don't do research." And so my research, the sum total of my research was Wikipedia. And I was able to go back to the 1700s, and it says very clearly there, if anyone else wants to look, that they don't know any further back than that. The word Trump in German means trumpet or drum. And he was originally born German, and he was not well off or royalty or anything like that, or Illuminati or anything like that, recorded in history. So anyone who's saying that he is or was or might be, who cares? It doesn't matter, because if he was something back in history, as indeed I was, and you can read about that in my book, My Journey into the Oneness, where I actually came clean about who I was in the time of Jesus, which, believe me, was not easy, because I've hidden it for over 25, well, longer than that, 35 years. But finally, my spirit guides told me I had to say it, so I did in that book. So if anyone's listening, they want to read that book, it's My Journey into the Oneness. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about the soul structure coding, the DNA and the RNA. So when we come back to the DNA, in truth, if we wanted to talk about the Neolithic men, women of that time, yes, we have the DNA of those people, but it's not activated in the DNA strand, because it serves us no purpose to have it activated at this time. However, children are, since 1990, there's a few of us who were with one extra DNA strand who were born during and after World War II, and I was one of those. And we call them liquid crystal children, because they have one extra DNA strand that operates through the liquid matter of the body. And that is essentially sensory to body and to experiences, how you feel about everything. But now we've got, since 2000, we've got children with 2, and even later, just recently, 3 DNA extra strands being activated. So by the time they're adults, all this controversy that they're talking about, Illuminatis and all that stuff, will be out the window. It'll be history, because that generation won't work with it. So what are we looking at? In the overview with the DNA, we have all over this world people who are, we want to put them into 2 categories, for and against. And it doesn't matter whether you're for ice cream or against ice cream. It doesn't matter whether you're for a president or against a president. The whole thing about controversy is dynamics. And dynamics gives us a choice, and we have a choice to transform our thoughts. So I could sit here and say, I'm really going to worry about whether or not people like me or not. Or I can sit the other way and say, I can go out there and really just shine and give people what I need, and then I don't really care what people think about me. Or I can be neutral and just say I'm doing my thing, which I tend to do. I like to just be neutral and share. And I cannot, for example, make someone change their mind about me, or their heart about me, or their soul about me. They've got to want to do that. And how are they going to want to do that? By identifying likes or dislikes through the upbringing. Now, I haven't talked about the RNA yet. We're still talking about the DNA. So let me go back as an example and say, My father was a war-torn post-traumatic stress disorder major out of the army when the war ended. And as a result of his stuck-up family who were brought up in India, I was drowned in India we did this, and in India we did that, and we had servants, and we did it, and here's my mother walking around in holy shirts with no money, trying to pay bills at a time when there was no work for anyone. And my dad, who's a university grad, had to take a job as a clerk, and in those days, a clerk, I mean, today it's wonderful if you're a clerk or clerk, depending on language you are. So, it's all changed. So we don't need to go back in history and try and drag it up and put it out as though it is important. It doesn't matter if you're a Mormon. It doesn't matter if you're a Catholic. It doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters is that you use it relative to yourself and you don't impose it upon another person. And what I see, and believe me, I'm not political. I am not in any sense the word political about anybody. If I know someone's going to be president, I know it because Spirit told me, not because I've read a book or talked about anyone. So when they asked me to write this book on Donald Trump, I was like, no, I'm not political. But I found out this book has nothing to do with politics. This is everything to do about his ancestry. So let me go back to 1700s, and the German person that I was able to find there on Wikipedia was actually a young man who had 100 marks, or the equivalent money in those days, to go and buy a piece of land and start a vineyard in a very nice area that was good for growing vines. And after a while, there was a blight, and the vines died. And then there was a rich relative. Now, this is not recorded. This was channeled, this part. There was a rich sort of relative they didn't know about who was secretive and hidden. And when he bought the vine and got them going, and they never knew, and then when he died, he left them the vineyard, so they got it back again. And by the time Donald Trump's grandfather was born, he didn't want to be conscripted into the army, so he skipped the country and went over to America to try and live with his sister, who was already married over in America. And she suggested that he study to be a barber, and which he did. He got a job the very next day. He qualified as a barber, but he wasn't making enough money. So she told him go north. So he went north, and he ended up providing, on short version here, for all the people hunting for gold, he ended up providing tents for people to live in and sleep in while they're doing their mining, and lots of alcohol, and some women, who were easy peasy to spend time with the men, and he made his fortune. And then he went back to Germany because he wanted to go back into his mom and show off what he'd made and so on. And when he got back to Germany, he even married a German woman. They wouldn't let him be German because he'd left and he hadn't done the conscription, so they kicked him out. And if they hadn't kicked him out, he would have stayed in Germany. Donald Trump, but for that one event, would have stayed German. And so he was kicked out, and so they had to get out by a certain time, and they got back to America, where he was an American anyway, because he'd done that on the quiet, re-established himself as an American, and worked with his new wife, and birthed Donald Trump's father. And soon after that, he died, and the other boy had to grow up and learn to do independent things. There's quite a bit in the story about that kind of thing, but there's no part that says it's good or bad, or shouldn't or should have, or he could have or couldn't have. It's just basically showing through the oneness what the spirit guides gave me, what I read in Wikipedia, used to show the soul structure coding that was going on that made it possible for Donald to be born in this country. And in the process of his parents, grandparents, and father, their ways of making money, and his own father built houses for returning vets and was also able to make money, and they both made it out of greed. And that's a very interesting thing because people were greedy in those days. They wanted more and more. And but when they get their money, both of them lost all their money, as indeed Donald has lost his money. And you can see the pattern through the DNA, and then you can see the RNA. And they go into that as well about upbringing. And, you know, by the time, so far, the few people I've given it to read have come back with, oh, I want my soul reading done, I want my DNA, and I want my RNA done, because it's left me going, who am I? And that's the point of the book. It's not about political. It's not about, you know, saying he's specially here or there. But in the overview, what it does say, his effect of his life brings about the change that was prophesied would happen. Okay? So he is the enigma, the puzzle that causes us all to say, wait a minute, we don't want things the way they were. We don't want things like this. We want new. Does that make sense now?
Yes, thank you for pointing all that out. Clears up some confusion because, well, he was an enigma, confused a lot of people, like I said. And but there is something else I want to ask you about specifically, not about him, but someone who's close to him. Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot, when she did one of her interviews with Mark Richards, who's contacts with raptor ETs. He's in jail for a murder that he didn't commit, trying to keep him locked up to make him shut up about the things he has to talk about. But Carrie can see him. She has done over half a dozen interviews with him, I believe. And in one of the sessions, she actually was informed by him that Donald Trump's wife is an extraterrestrial hybrid who's been put there to help make sure that he is protected and follows the intentions of the light. Do you have any comments on that radical claim?
Let's take the reptilians out of the summation here,
Not
because
reptilians, raptors. Raptors.
raptors, reptilians, it's all the same. Okay, the bottom line is, if you really want to know about our DNA, we have been genetically engineered 27 times. And so when you think about 27 times, and then you add to it today that we're able to go into the womb and make sure the baby comes out as a boy or a girl, or do psychic, this tiny little surgery on the baby to refix a DNA, or change a heart, or do something, we are on the verge of becoming a person, doctors, lawyers, whoever they are, and training up to come. I mean, we can't really imagine it yet, but we will be changing our species, as indeed things have been changed in us before. And given time and eons of time that we can't even begin to imagine now, we will be off-world and we will repopulate other planets. That's how the universe keeps going. That's how the cosmos keeps going. That's how the oneness keeps going. So this awakening to the fact that there are more species out there, in the cosmos, is all part of awakening us to realize that our DNA doesn't only cover human. Now let me take that into animals and let me make it very basic. When you see a calf born and there's a lion and tiger nearby to a deer, I'll say, that little animal, as soon as it's born, and learns to stand and knows it's going to have to run for its life within seconds, and will, much to the amazement of everyone, run as fast as the rest of the herd. Okay? It's instinct, it's inspiration, but it's DNA that has been activated the moment the birthing happens, the water comes away, the animal passes through the birth canal, the brain is stimulated immediately to kick into survival. And that survival instinct has been passed down through eons of ages. Now, we're just talking about an animal right now, but think about a human and how complicated our thoughts are, how amazing our brains are. And then you start to realize luminosity is nothing. You know, if you go back to when I was in the time of Jesus, it was a way of being in that time. And when I learned eventually what I'd learned about the oneness from that time, I was able to bring it forward and out of me to share with the world. At a time when the rest of the world was going, yeah, this woman's Lala. Okay, now here today people are talking about aliens, you know, look like reptilians and so on. And people are still going, oh, that person's Lala. They're stupid. Okay, but the bottom line is anything that we can imagine or think of. Take Star Wars and all the beautiful things we watch in those movies. Where do you think they came from? They didn't just imagine it. It's been done before. And we're just recalling and remembering. And so the coding, the DNA has all of that information in every strand within the DNA. And when we let the geo start working, it's all relative to what our little role is in the full play of production that is going on this planet right now. So in the overview, even for the planet itself, like we're having earthquakes, we're having floods, and we're having fires, it's all part of the whole of teaching us and working with us to end one way of being so that we move into a new dynamic. And Trump, if we want to bring him in, let's bring in everyone else who's on that computer or on that TV every night. All the people who have got my point of view and my hearsay and my idea, and I want to vote or I don't want to vote, and all the newsmen and all the doctors and all the lawyers and all the people who have been accused of rape right now. And it goes on and on. You know, it's all about waking us up to what was and what we want to change. And these youngsters are coming along, even my grandchildren already, they're telling me they want to clean up the water and they want to grow different plants. They want to have more herbs and so on and so forth. They don't want medicine. They want herbs. You know, they want oils. They want essences. It's a different time. And my generation has been the beginning of that time. I was mixing essential oils on my windowsill 3 floors up, getting beef fat and putting flowers in them so that I could get those essences to rub on my mum's foot because she was a cripple. And where did I get that idea from? From my spirit guides. Okay, it was years later that I actually learned that's how they made it. But I must have done that somewhere in my past. But is it important today? No, because I can go out and buy a bottle of essential oils already made. So things are there. We just have to prioritize what is good and dump what is bad. And that's what we're doing. We're having a little battle of sorting out what is good and works and we want to keep it, or transform what is good and make it better, or dump what was because it's lousy and it's not working for anybody. And one of those things obviously is medical health. One of those things is education, obviously, because we need more good ways to teach students because they're not getting good ways. They're bored. The teachers don't know how to teach. They don't know how to sound interesting. You know, I remember when I was in school, it was like, open at page 49 and read aloud paragraph. And we were, did we remember what we read at the end? No. Were we told to go home and we read the whole chapter on our own? Yes. I asked my children, my grandchildren, were you told to read out loud? No. Were you told to read a book? Yeah. Well, did you read it out loud? No. Do you know what reading out loud does? It makes you remember it because you hear your voice. There's things like that have been forgotten. Well, I've been talking for a lot. You must have a question.
Well, yes, getting off the subject of Trump, but getting on the subject of ETs and revealing things for the truth. I don't know if you've heard, but it appears to be something that, well, is it a joke? I don't know, and I can't help but wonder if I inspired this. Did you know that there is a Facebook event up called Storm Area 51? They can't stop all of us. That says on September 20th, let's do a million man stampede march on Area 51 to break the base down and reveal the truth to wake everybody up. I can't help but wonder, considering that at Contact in the Desert, I actually during one of the panels actually said, considering that humans are so cognitively dissonant and won't believe the truth even if it's told to them, and considering there's ET racists out there who don't want to tell the truth to humanity because they think they can't handle it, do you think the only way to wake up humanity is to force the awakening by doing, a Million Man Stampede March on Area 51? And then I said I'd be more than happy to put my fat ass at the front of the stampede to be the point man, front man. And then everybody in the audience laughed. And then Stephen Bassett of Paradigm Research Group answered my question and said he does not think that such a march would be totally necessary. Well, he thinks it's unnecessary, even though he says that. However, there seems to be over 500,000 people that say they're going to this, and 500 or so that say they're interested. And the guy who made it, this event, actually did on the pin post on the event, said, government, this is just a joke. I'm not really planning this. Well, okay, the funny thing is, Brad Johnson, Channels of Dronus, he did say at the beginning of this year that the area of Nevada is a hot spot on planet Earth in the year 2019, known as the year of disclosure, that everybody should be watching because something will be significant. Could it be that this thing that was supposed to be a joke all along is actually going to manifest into something real? And if it does, I can't help but wonder, do I have to go on my obligation and actually show up at this and be the front man, point man in this stampede just because I said so at Contact in the Desert? Okay, so if it's not too much trouble, maybe you could ask your guides to tell you something about what they see about the future of Nevada being a hot spot, and maybe this could have anything to do with it. Well, just for the hell of it, I need to ask you, is it really worth doing such a stampede? I mean, they say they can't kill all of us if we're a million strong. Well, if they have death ray weapons, then maybe they can kill us all in one sitting if we do a stampede like that. What's your take?
Well, first of all, I have to be honest with you. I told you I don't watch the news. I don't read anything online. I keep very much to myself. So, no, I have no input about that, and I had no idea about it. In terms of what spirit guides say is September is key to a turning point. There are going to be a lot of walks and talks and things happening and sudden news breaking that will turn Trump's life around and many other people's lives around as well. I have no idea of the details. I was just told that I needed to get this book out by September, and the Stonewall Press is behind me. They're sponsoring me with this book, and they know instinctively, they don't know why, but they know this book has to be out. And so I'm leaning more towards people want to know about themselves. They want answers to why can I not get myself into a positive scenario? Why am I always shouting and ranting and raving? So when you talk about a mass crowd, going to Area 51, it depends what mood they're in. Like attracts like in the mirror image. If that many people wanted to go and were peaceful, then maybe a peaceful walk might end up opening something up. But if they arrive in a rampage and storm the Bastille, as it were, there's going to be a lot of suffering, and a lot of people, might be killed or trampled on or whatever in the rush. I mean, there's a lot of people. But ultimately, in the overview, it would still, either way, cause something. There would be a response somehow. Whether it's silent, whether it's just standing there, or whether it is actually, being destructive. Either way, it brings about a change. And that's the thing that we need to realize, that Do you remember that movie, The Power of One, about a young white boy who was orphaned and he was put in with all the black people
In
in
South
an prison?
Africa. Yeah, I remember they actually showed us that in World Studies class in
Right.
ninth grade in my
I,
school.
I really want you to share that idea with people because that is the truth. We all have that same power, and it comes through our personality. It comes through our passion and desire. And in that movie, the boy had a passion to learn to box. And that united, and sport does unite people. When everybody's in the arena watching their favorite team play, they're all, yeah, and then they get outside and have few drinks and start arguing and fighting. you know, Mankind is a crazy mixed up human being, or whoever we are. We all have our good side and our bad side. We all blame and shame. We all get angry and say it's someone else's fault that I can't earn some money, or it's someone else's fault that I'm ill. No, it isn't. It's our own fault because we have, like I began with, I put all my energy into giving my left arm away or my right arm away on an issue, and over the years I've got rheumatoid arthritis and I can't move the arm because I've believed and continue to believe that I have to suffer to get something. We don't believe the other side of ourselves, that if you ask the oneness, it'll come in the right time for you. I've got things that Spirit told me would come true in 1982, written in a book, that have all come true until now. And there's only one thing that hasn't come true. And I'm going to tell you, but I'm hoping I'm so wrong. An atom bomb explosion. I'm praying I'm wrong. The planes that have come down, seen them all. Everything that's happened in every country, I've written it down with the Middle East. Turkey's come in now, Russia's come in, it's all written in my books back in the 1980s. And I'm just praying that it isn't in September that bomb goes off. And I've even seen how it happens. I would tell you because I want people to be aware. But at the same time, when I tell someone, it could be that someone that gets the idea from me. That's why I get careful about sharing. But basically, I was meditating, and I was like in a plane taking down, and I could see the rooftops were all flat, no steeples, no pyramids or anything like that. It was just all flat houses. And as I'm coming down, I'm seeing, zoom in, and I see this young man, probably late teenager, talking with an older man who's got one of those kind of rucksacks that they make out of material, and it's got strings on it. It's not a proper backpack even. And he says to this young man, run with this as fast as you can to the square, and I hear some money. And when you get there, you'll meet someone else who'll give you the other money. And look for this man. So this boy's running through the town. And I zoom back up. And he gets into the square. And then there's this mass explosion. And I see the explosion. The town is in a half circle of mountains. Sort of an arc shape. And I see the energy go up and hit those, and then it comes back over that town, and everything goes flat, 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 flat. And I woke out of that meditation so bad because the two words I had in my head was Russia and Yemen. And I'm even bad at geography, and it was so bad a vision that I had to call my husband. I was in Japan. And I said, is Yemen in Russia? Because it sounds like a Russian word. And my husband laughed and said, no, why? And told me where. And I told him the vision. And that was back in somewhere around 208, at the beginning of the shift and the transformation, that last one. But in 1982, I was looking down over the earth, and I could see all these sparkles of light. And I said to Spirit, why is America dark? There was no lights. And why is there all sparkles over the Middle East area? And I heard that's because they're at war and America is not involved. no lights, no bombs, nothing going off. So America's going to be in peace. And maybe that's the result of Donald Trump. I don't know. I'm not trying to make sense of it. But we cannot stop people who are violent. We cannot stop them, but we can keep them away from us. And in the overview, maybe that's what he's doing. I don't know. I don't have a point of view on it. But I pray that that one vision I wrote down in 1978 and now saw again in 2008 won't happen. I pray that.
I hope we're on a positive timeline too. And well, September being a big time of things to happen, I could see that happening. Not just because it's a fall equinox period and equinoxes and solstices are significant, but about what you said about peaceful non-compliance and protest and justice. I mean, when it comes to getting justice, there's two schools of thought. Justice is either glorified revenge. The people that don't want to see justice use that as an excuse to say it's not worth pursuing justice because it's glorified revenge. But on the other hand, you got people that say, you cannot let people get the idea that they can have their way with you and take advantage of you. Therefore, justice is something you should always find. You got to saddle up your boys. You got to draw a hard line. And I think I should take this moment to point out that in September, I'm actually attempting to do a little planning to get a little justice myself. Some of the people in the spiritual community have kind of said you're kind of going about this the wrong way, but I'm not going to name any names or say any events here, but some people may be able to do the math and connect the dots and figure out what exactly I'm talking about. There is a conference that I have a lot of beef with for getting kicked out of for being barefoot at the conference, which is bullcrap because it was a spiritual conference and people go barefoot at spiritual conferences all the time. And for them to do that to me on liability grounds makes no sense, considering that spiritual people know that if you think positive and worry about, well, don't worry about bad things happening, then only good things will come. On the other hand, if you worry about bad things happening, such as someone being a liability concern and causing you to get sued because they're barefoot at a conference, well then by virtue of the law of attraction, that's going to manifest better. Therefore, I think it is in my best interest when this next version of the conference comes around in September to show up at the conference with a sign that says it's okay to go barefoot at spiritual conferences, as well as a bullhorn to make my voice heard loud and clear, making the message go out Alex Jones style. And people say that's kind of going about it the wrong way, but consider, how can you say it's going about it the wrong way when I got more than enough laws from a case law and a constitution standpoint to say that I have the right to do this from a free speech standpoint? And what better way to do this?
Can I interrupt you? Sorry,
Okay.
because I get this stuff in my head, and if I don't talk it well, I get it. The spirit guides are saying to you, you've got to remember your RNA. What did you see under 5 years old that you believe is the way to act? In other words, if you went to school, were you told to stand up in front of the class and read, and therefore you have to demonstrate? Were you told to sit at the back of the class and be quiet, and therefore you have to not do something? These are primary little things that we observe, we listen, we watch, and we do as we're told. By the time we're 8, we start to follow Dad, and we watch what Dad says. And if Dad says, you don't have to sit at the back of the class, you can sit at the front next time, or, whatever it is, and gives you a different point of view, then you change. So your RNA is what you absorb from your teachers, your priest, your mom, your dad, outside of the womb. This is not to do with your ancestors. This is to do with hearsay. This is to do with learning. So when you ask me about going barefoot, if you're in India, for example, yes, you've got to take your sandals off before you step into any room. Same in Japan. I taught in Japan for over 28 years. And I never once could wear my shoes in any way and wouldn't do. And today in my house, if I didn't have a handicapped husband, I would actually not have shoes on in my house. But he can't take his off, so we have to let that one go. Again, you see, it's RNA. His state of mind, his state of heart, his state of body has caused him to be ill. My state of heart, my state of body, I'm 77 and people think I'm 55. Because I rejuvenate. I don't hold on to my history. I don't say, well, my mum said, and my dad said, and my teacher said, and that woman up the road said. I just process whatever comes at me. For example, you said you wanted to go to this, convention. You don't have to make a statement about being barefoot. Just put your socks on. You don't have to be barefoot. Compromise. If someone says something, just say, well, my shoes hurt me right now. You don't have to justify and rationalize it. If you want to, say something convivial that someone can accept. It's just, people have to adapt. And if you don't have that part of you, if you've got a rigid mind, a fixed mind on an issue, you're going to make yourself sick. If you move on from it and say that was an experience, why do you have to go back to that conference if it's just to show your barefootedness? I think that's a bit of a weak thing. If you want to go back to the conference because you want to hear people and learn stuff while walking around barefoot, then have a reason that can be validated, that people can understand, like my shoes hurt me.
Well, okay, but the problem is, in my case, that she's actually banned me from all future conferences. So are you telling me it's flat out stupid for me to show up with a bullhorn and say, if you do not reinstate me at this conference, I'm going to continue to exercise my First Amendment rights at this conference with a bullhorn and keep exposing you for the...
Well, giving away anyone, because we don't want to do that, but what type of conference is it? What's the topic?
It was a spirituality and metaphysics conference. Like I said, people go by for conferences like that all the time. So.
Nobody can ban you from any live event in the public.
Okay, it's not in the public, it's on private property. But if I stand on a public sidewalk, then I'm within my rights to protest. So.
Well, if it's on private property, then you are not invited. That's the same as there being a party. If I throw a party tonight in my house and I invite my friends and I don't want you, no, you can't come. It's not worth the issue. It's move on. This is not my journey. This is not my pathway. This is not a part of my DNA. I've met this person for a reason. I've met someone who has judgment, and that judgment doesn't fit in with my judgment. So why do I want to be in controversy and cause myself suffering? I don't. So I move on. I leave them behind. Quite honestly, if someone came to my house and said I have to have barefooted and I'm doing an event, they'd be welcome. But, there are people who think, for example, there's famous people, I won't mention names, who think if you touch them in a big crowd, they're going to get every kind of bug under the sun and be ill. So they walk around with their hands inside their pockets so nobody can touch them. You have to acknowledge that they have fear. And if they have fear, they probably get a disease from somewhere, somehow. Okay? Fear, pain, anger, and guilt, and loss are the worst things that we can hold on to. And if you realize you've lost nothing by letting go of that conference, there's going to be 1,001 other conferences you can go to where they won't even notice you're barefoot. Okay? There's going to be 1,001 better places where you probably hear better information, especially the newcomers and the new young ones that are speaking now. So move on. Don't make it an issue. It's the same with, going back to New Mexico. Okay, if they want to go and people want to go and knock down the fence, they're going to do it. There's nothing you have to be involved with. They'll do it with or without you. The fact that you put a suggestion up, sometimes, some of the suggestions I've put out back in my 20s and written in books, now people are coming back to me saying, I've decided to try that suggestion you got in that book. And I'm going, what suggestion was that? I can't remember. I have to go back and read the book. So there are things we move on from. We give things at a certain time. And we do it. My mom said, my dad said, and so on. And then given time, that RNA moves into the DNA and it becomes an accepted way of thinking and feeling that we don't even bother about it. And that's when it becomes coded into the DNA. And that's when the baby comes into the womb or comes through the sperm and picks it up through the next generation. So you want to be careful what RNA you take into your belief system as absolute, because if you take it in as absolute, it will be followed. And I'll go back to Donald Trump here as an example. His grandfather really believed he needed to be wealthy. His father, therefore, really believed he needed to be wealthy. And Donald, therefore, needed to believe that he would be wealthy. His grandfather lost all his money because he found out health was more important than money. His own father found out that being wealthy brought him more misery and suffering, so he gave it all to Donald, who tried to carry on and didn't, and Donald is losing it, just like all three of them lost it. DNA says repeat the pattern. So if you want to change the pattern, then you've got to not believe all the RNA that you take in. You've got to think for yourself. And the children that are coming in now with the second and third DNA strands activated do not want to hear their parents. They already know what their parents are going to say. Sorry, my throat chakra here. I don't want to listen to my parents are passed on, but I don't want to hear their voices from their history in my head anymore. If I hear something that my dad has said or my mum has said that's out of history, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear a new person with a new idea. And that's what these children are like. So the children coming in, they should be telling their parents, I don't want your rules and regulations. I want to find out for myself. I know this, I know this, I know this. I need a teacher who knows this. I need someone who can take me further down the road. I don't want boring lessons. I want to feel, touch, smell, taste my lessons. And so this generation that's coming along, they're brilliant. They're brilliant. And they leave us looking stupid. There was a little boy on David Letterman about 7 or 8 years ago, and short version, he talking about dinosaurs, and David asked him, did your parents teach you? He said, oh no. He said, well, how did you learn? He said, I read about it. And he said, well, you're only 5 now. When did you start to read? He said, when I was 2. He said, when did you read your full first textbook? He said, when I was 2. Where do you think he learned all that? He brought it with him. These entities that are coming in now, their spirits are that evolved. They know. They don't need to have the history shoved down their throat. They want the future, and they're here for that. And they're going to develop new ways. Already we've got here in on my way to Las Vegas, we have fields of what do you call those things? On your sunroof, electric solar panels. Solar panels, I'll get there in the end. That's going to be the future. Houses are going to be built with those. We won't need to have electric service because we'll get it ourselves. That's just a start. So much going to change. Are we run out of time?
Yeah, sooner the better. Well, it's 7:10 my time, but a little over an hour. But like I've said many times, 2-hour shows cost me a big audience because humans have lousy attention spans. So, but hey, I got to get information out. And well, usually when I had a guest on for 2 hours originally, any subsequent shows I do with them is usually an hour. So I guess we'll call it a night. Great having you on. I'm sure I'll see you at a future conference.
Can I just give my website? Yes. Is Sumari, S for sugar, U, M as in mother, A-R-I, S for sugar, center, spelled American.com. I've got YouTube. All you have to do on YouTube is just search Margaret Rogers Van Coops, or anywhere actually on Google. You're going to find me. I come up all over the place. And if anyone wants their soul coding, I do it. I charge $400. It takes me a good 2 hours. Sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the individual. They have questions along with it. They're included. I download, I channel it, I record it, and I email it to them as an attachment. So if there's anyone listening who wants their soul structure coding done, just write to Dr. Margaret, Margaret, RVC, that's Rogers Van Coops initials, at gmail.com. Dr. Margaret, RVC at gmail.com, and we'll go from there. I'll contact you. Okay?
Okay. Good luck. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
Take care.
having me.
Namaste.
All right. Bye-bye.